Good evening and welcome to the October meeting of the Granville Exempted Village School District Board of Education. Thank you all for being here this evening. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Dr. McCormick? Here. Ms. Deeds? Here. Mr. Wolf?
Here. I'm on the move already. All right.
Good evening. Tonight we have the pleasure of commending 15 Granville High School students for their participation in the National Merit Scholarship Recognition process. So for those of you not familiar with that process, the National Scholarship Program is an academic competition and recognition for scholarships. Each year, more than 1.5 million students across the country enter the National Merit Program by taking the preliminary SAT or PSAT or the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Of these students, approximately 50,000 across the country, or the top 3%, are recognized by the National Merit Corporation. We have 15 students that are being recognized. So I want you to put that into context, which is a tremendous feat. So tonight we are going to commend our commended scholars first, and then our semifinalists. So as you hear your name, please come up and get in line so that I don't mess up who's getting what certificate. So, Rudy Bradley, Cade Brodigan, Riley Chodak, Nadia Fabrici. You were expecting that, weren't you? Fabraci, McKenna Furman, Annika Green, Mary Kate Hill, Nathaniel Homan, Alexandra Mazik, Allison Moore, Abigail Parsons, and Tate Smith. Please join me in congratulating. All right, we're gonna
Probably need to
let
get
your parents take photos as
Yeah.
well.
Can you get
Yeah.
two rows, one behind the other, maybe like six and six or whatever that breaks up?
Okay, you guys just passed an intelligence test.
Literally the reporter didn't.
Yeah. So look at that. You organized quickly.
Perfect.
This is called paparazzi.
That shoot.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Now, if you can stand there the rest of the evening.
Parents, are we all good? Grandpa, are we good?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. And next, we'd like to honor our semifinalists. Now, I said that our commended scholars were in the top 3%. Our semifinalists are in the top 1% of the students that took the PSAT. So this is a tremendous accomplishment. And they move on into the finalist stage where they can compete for additional scholarship dollars, significant scholarship dollars. So congratulations to Andy Hoban, Anya Linton-Fry, and Becky Miller. Come on up.
Okay, now.
All right.
Wait, wait.
All right. Or yours again.
Now we got it. You got it?
Yeah.
All right. It is always fun to recognize our talented students in Granville schools, and I'm sure you have plenty of studying to do. So at this point in the agenda, you can leave. You won't hurt our feelings, I promise. Thank you.
You're not here. Go out that
More lessons. Especially when you have a lot of it too. Yeah, we missed.
All right. So it looks like we don't have a student report this evening.
Right.
Move to staff reports.
Okay. So, let's see here. So in the staff reports, I'm going to give you a board policy update, and then afterwards, although we neglected to put it in staff reports, Brittany's going to do the monthly financial report in staff reports. So, and then you can vote on it later. So, board policy update. And need to advance it. So I'm going to just give you a highlight of some of the items that are for our first reading. So the first two policies listed, and then also GCB2, professional contract, staff contracts. In certain contracts of our employees, we have provisions for vacation payout if not used. So in the treasurer's contract, my contract, and also in some administrative contracts, we have that provision. We didn't have a board policy reference to that, so we are cleaning up that board policy language because it will then align with the contracts that we've already issued. Student transportation services is a byproduct of House Bill 166, which was part of the budget bill that occurred this summer, and it relates to a provision to not be able to remove transportation services once the school year has begun. So that is in reaction to school districts that cut transportation services after a levy fails. And so the General Assembly has now removed that authority. So what will happen is most likely school districts will remove transportation prior to elections, prior to the beginning of school, and not be able to reinstate until the next year. So again, unintended consequences of poor legislation. But ask me how I really feel. Student wellness program. That policy is referencing now the additional student wellness dollars that are going to be received. Actually, we received our first check for the student wellness dollars that are associated with the budget. There is a requirement for a mental health or student wellness plan. We are working on that right now. I intend to bring that to you at some point in the near future for your review and approval so that we can start to use those dollars to meet a multi-pronged approach to student wellness. So that policy is just being updated to reference those dollars being available. GBK is just, honestly, it's been just about on every update because new vaping language is being added every single time, related to the concerns going on with the vaping issue across the country. All of the related policies to tobacco, we are picking version 2, which means we are a completely tobacco-free area. So it is not permitted on the premises in any form or fashion. Remedial instruction is based on, the old language was still in our policy related to the Ohio graduation test. This strips out that language and inserts the end of course and Ohio State assessment language, and then the requirement to provide remedial instruction based on anybody who is deficient in those areas. Promotion and retention is just a language update. Instead of, I think it was ESL, it's now English Language Learners, and it has been for a while in our vernacular, but it is now referenced in policy. And then graduation requirements. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the graduation requirements because this is the first time you're going to hear it, but then you're also going to hear about it probably in December, maybe January. So the state of Ohio has passed now the new graduation requirements. We have done some just standard updating related to some options that we have to go above and beyond the current graduation requirements, but we are going to be spending some time developing our local response to the new graduation requirements. There is some flexibility and some control that we have in creating what are called seals. Think of those seals as like badges, where a student can earn a biliteracy seal, and that can be used as a competency to satisfy part of a graduation requirement. There are obviously multiple academic badges or seals, and then there are some other seals that we can use to help a student be successful. It actually aligns quite well with our portrait of a graduate as well. But we can create those in alignment with some of the things that we have in place right now, but that don't qualify for graduation currently. So Mr. Bernath is working with the high school staff to kind of put together our interpretation of those seals, and we'll present that so that by the spring you will be looking at the new graduation requirements for the following year.
And this is date-driven, though, that they're giving us this opportunity to define things this way?
Yes. Yeah, so there was a concerted effort, if you remember, on the part of our advocacy to, one, define the graduation requirements, because if you remember, we had students entering 9th and 10th grade not knowing what the graduation requirements were. So the Alliance partnered with Fordham Education and the Ohio 8 to advocate for these seals to be developed and to the elimination of some of the tests that are required. So in the new graduation requirements, there are less assessments required for passage in order to get a high school diploma, but they've also added some additional competencies. Ryan, am I capturing that accurately?
Yeah, the benchmark is now it's not 7 tests anymore. There are 2, Algebra 1 and Language Arts 2, that students have to pass now. They can't get a 2 or something like that on it. They have to actually pass. We don't know what that passing score is going to be. The state's working on that, and we should know soon. Then the second part of that, all the other tests that are given, you have to get 2 of these seals once you pass those 2 tests. One can be from the state and one can be locally defined, and there are, I think, 4 different options for the locally defined seals. Fine arts, extracurricular activities, leadership, technology, like our programming and coding courses would fit well. So there's some options that we can choose how students meet those seals, but they have to meet 1 state seal, pass at least 2 tests, and then they can have 1 from us, or they can get 2 of the state seals. So our flexibility is the 4 local seals that we'll have.
It seems like a pretty significant difference in graduation requirements coming from the state.
Yeah, so the advocacy was that their 18-point system was not necessarily in alignment with what the expectation is for a high school diploma. And so they received significant pushback on that. and I think they listened over time. This is better, it's not great.
Well, I mean, I think we really do a great job in graduating students that are very capable and so forth, so I don't imagine that there's a negative impact at all for us, and lets us redefine a little bit things. Just what's your sense, out of curiosity, for other districts in Ohio that might have struggled with graduation requirements in the past, and how this is going to influence them?
So,
Because I think it's going to have more influence on the other end of the spectrum potentially in terms of how graduation is going.
we had a lot of conversation with the Ohio 8. So the Ohio 8 is it's all of the large urban schools. They really like this orientation from the standpoint of creating additional pathways or opportunities for students to demonstrate competency. You know, they still want to have the academic rigor and create those thresholds, but I think this gives them a lot of other ways to show competency for a high school graduation or a high school diploma. So I think they were active in the advocacy efforts as well. Yeah. Related to, these are just revisions, slight tweaks. So truancy is now also included in House Bill 66 was defining the truancy and excluding medical excuses that, you know, we were struggling with. Remember, our chronic absenteeism rate included students that had legitimate medical issues, and they were being included in that number, and the state finally came to their senses on that. Obviously, I referenced the tobacco use by students. Student suspension or student expulsion, again, relates to the ability or inability for us to suspend out of school at the pre-K 3 level. And it also limits our ability to suspend and expel at the K-12 level. So it's just tweaking some of that language to align with some of the policy development that's occurred since the House Bill 166 has been approved. So these will get a second reading at our next board meeting, and then I will also ask for your approval. Any questions on any of the policies?
Thank you.
Thank you. Go to the financial report.
Yep. If you open up to page 2 of the monthly financial report, this is the historical summary. So just a couple items to point out here. Revenue in September of this year is down prior to last year. And that's primarily due to the timing of our property tax settlement that was received in August. And then on the expenditure side, we had the board-approved transfer to the athletic complex project that we reported in September as well. So that accounts for the increase on the expenditure side. So those two items combined have resulted in decreasing the cash balance over prior months. Flipping over to page 3. This is the revenue detail, and like I said, we received the property tax settlement last month, so we don't have any change in the first 2 line items. And our next income tax payment will come at the end of this month. So looking at just unrestricted and restricted that we receive twice a month. Just want to note that ODE has actually updated the format and how those state payments come to us, and it very clearly shows the flat funding over prior years, so that was a change. But we are on track in terms of the forecasted amount for restricted, for unrestricted rather, and then restricted will be updated when we plug in the new forecast numbers from November. To be in alignment with that flood funding there as well. And then I would anticipate receiving our property tax allocation this month, which should bring us to about 50% on that line item as well. And then the last item here is the TIF payment that we recorded in the general fund rather than in the permanent improvement fund, which kind of repays back the general fund over time for that transfer to the athletic project. On the expenditure side, through September, we are about 25% of the way through the fiscal year. So when you glance down the percent of total forecast column on the right-hand side, we want to be around that 25% target, which we are in almost every category. So we're on track there. The only thing to note, again, is the operating transfer out for the athletic project that we did not originally have in the forecast. Just at the time in May, we weren't sure how that was gonna, appear from an accounting standpoint. So now that we have that in there, we'll include that in the November forecast and update it here as well. Flipping over to the graph on page 5, this shows July through September year-to-date numbers. And we show that revenue is increasing at a greater rate than expenditures. And I'm going to look at including some different graphics in here that I think represent kind of the year-to-date numbers a little bit better than this graph moving forward. Just still playing around with the tools that we have and figuring out what best represents the data. Okay, and then page 6, we have the capital budget, which, again, here you really see the flow through of that transfer is showing up on the capital budget as well, the very last item. So we took out the original allocation that we had for bleachers and for the track and combined that into one line item there on the bottom for the athletic project transfer. So we are pretty much on target with spending out each line item here. The only item to note is technology, which I think is just a matter of when that's spent. During the course of the year, we still anticipate to spend that full amount. And then the last page is the cash reconciliation. Any questions about any of that?
Come on.
Thank you.
We're now at the portion of our agenda where we welcome public comments. If anybody would like to step up to the podium, provide your name and address, and share your comments, we welcome that. Seeing no great demand? Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
Do I say that there?
Yeah, thank you. That was just recorded that way.
Yep.
I just wondered when you got my payment for the tax levy. Yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to make an estimated payment, like I do with my state taxes and my US taxes. I had to make an estimated tax. So are you counting that in there?
We don't receive information on individuals.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, is that on your statement, the payments that are coming in, the estimated payments that have to come in during the year?
We receive like a breakdown of how much is based on withholdings and how much is estimated, but the timing of when that comes, like we received a payment in July, so if you did an estimate before July, that would be included, but if you've done it since July, we have not received it yet. We receive it 4 times a year.
And remember, the state of Ohio is the collection agency for the income tax, and then they give us the money. We're not the collecting agency.
But I didn't pay any income tax, it was all on capital gains and dividends and stuff like that. And I wasn't warned that I was gonna have to make these estimated payments, so maybe I should have been. But I'm not gonna have to pay a penalty because I didn't pay the estimated payments in each quarter until I found out about in July.
Okay, thank you.
Well, am I gonna have to pay a penalty? 'Cause
I don't know.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
That would be.
Good question for your
Texas.
accountant.
Yeah. whoever's doing your taxes will probably be able to give you that information.
And oftentimes in circumstances like this,
But,
everybody
well,
better
yeah,
explain the
how they
situation.
told
You
that
can
they
be-
did, I know that you notify companies that were, paying people salaries and stuff like that, that they have to take out. But was the public told that if they had to pay an estimated tax?
Well, we didn't notify companies, but employees, for example, I notified my company that there was an withholding this year for the tax. And obviously my accountant knows that there's an additional withholding for the tax. But we don't contact companies to tell them that.
Was the public notified that they had to make estimated taxes?
Well,
Period, I mean, for the school, not for the state or for.
sure. We did not put out a notice to the public that they have to make estimated taxes, make estimated payments and taxes. Thank you. Board discussion?
So I thought it would be an opportunity to give you a kind of an update on the private fundraising side of the athletic complex. We've talked a lot about, our public side of the equation, but there has been a significant effort on the part of the private group that is raising revenue for this project to raise the dollars necessary for the 50-50 match. And so as you are aware, that there was a donor that made a challenge gift for, to the community that was up to $1 million. So if the community was able to raise $500,000, this donor would give $1 million in honor of her late brother, Walter J. Hodges, in the naming of the stadium. And so that process has been going very well. We have still some outstanding pledges that need to be made to satisfy the athletic boosters commitment of $250,000. So we're still fundraising on that effort, but we've had a lot of private and local foundations give to this project. So Kiwanis, Rotary, several businesses. We have grants into the Granville Community Foundation. We have the Alford Foundation, several other large foundations. Obviously, the Gilbert Reese Foundation is the large donor. But we are well on our way to meet that match and also exceed that if possible. So we are, when I say we, I mean our private citizens that are doing our fundraising effort, doing a fantastic job. Every Friday night at a home game, they have a table set up to solicit additional pledges. On the $250,000 pledge commitment, we are about 57% there. And so obviously additional dollars need to be raised. But on the aggregate challenge gift, we're well on our way to getting the full $1 million commitment.
Through December?
December 31st. Yes.
And there was you could pledge a certain amount over and pay over
Yes.
time? And so is it the total amount that is figured into?
Yes.
Or not just what they can pay this year?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yeah, it's a commitment,
Okay.
and they honor the full value of the commitment in the match. Yeah, and so the opportunity to give and pay over 5 years is available to I'd like to thank a lot of people, but Matt Miller, Sally Heckman, Andy Wildman, Janelle Rogers, Jared Cottrell, Pam Hooker, Dawn Eggleston, Mike Schmidt, to name just a few of the private community members that are allocating time, talent, and effort to this project.
I know that
what I call refer to the grassroots effort, the $250,000 commitment. They're going to be meeting Monday because the consensus amongst the organizations and the folks on the committee is they want to get this done this year. So it's off their plate, so they're not coming back every year.
Absolutely.
As booster clubs asking for that, so. But I'm very impressed at 57%.
Oh, yeah.
It hasn't been a hard sell on that, so. But they've done an outstanding job of securing donors and identifying folks.
I'd like to thank Mr. Wolf too, because I know he's been spending a lot of time on this effort, working with a lot of community groups, just about every fundraising meeting that we held. And he's been really good at speaking to folks about this and representing the board and a number of those people. Thank you.
Do you sense it will kind of keep up the momentum into next year as well during the construction phase, or is they hoping to kind of have it wrapped up to some extent?
I get the sense they'd like to be done with focusing on this effort. But I think it's going to be ongoing. Because through some of the, talking to some of the committee members, there's some folks that have said they're going to contribute and haven't. So I think it's just, there's a focus on large donors, and I think now is the time to really turn the focus towards the grassroots effort, the Granville Grant and that type of stuff. And there's also some smaller businesses that might not be giving at a higher level, but can make a significant impact with $10,000, $20,000 donation that really haven't been approached yet, that have been identified, but they haven't been approached.
I would say as we get in the construction phase, then there's going to be a lot more visible, action going on and things like that people will want to be a part of.
Yeah.
I hope we can find a way to continue that even through next fall.
Yeah.
When the new stadium opens, I think that's a great time to kind of continue pushing to find ways to get additional funds from folks that didn't.
The
have a
naming
chance to
opportunities
before.
are out there, so if something's not named and someone wants to, once it's constructed, name it, that's obviously an opportunity for additional dollars. So,
There's a little bit of chatter with Robertson having their trailer there.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, this is happening.
There was that.
Yeah, no, I
So-
think that gets people engaged. hopefully,
It does,
and I
it
think
does.
I hope they can perceive that we have always continued need to contribute to the project, right? Because there's lots more
Right.
to do, and it's not exactly defined how it's all going to work out, so plenty more opportunities there.
There's a lot of opportunities, continue to stress that.
there was a little trash talking happening on Twitter today between a few of the Licking Valley and Granville people. They were saying that they would love to host because our facility does not have the ability to have as many people as they think are going to attend. So he said, thanks, but no thanks, we're going to host. It is going to be a very well-attended game, and we're looking at ways to provide opportunities for people to park in different locations like the intermediate school and potentially provide a bus to shuttle people back and forth. Because as you know, that area, it's very congested. So at a minimum, parking some of their buses off location to free up additional parking spots.
That's going to be a big strength going forward. If we have increased capacity of the stadium and one of those bigger events, that's something to think about.
Always looking for additional parking availability. Also on this agenda is the construction contract with Robinson, as Fred mentioned, the trailers on site, so, it will definitely garner some interest. Mr. Robertson was here at the last meeting, and I feel like we're in very good hands with them running Point. So very excited about them investing back in this community. And I think I shared this at the last meeting, but he was part of that initial move from Harmon Field at the elementary to over to the high school, and it was part of the construction of the concession stand at that time. So he really views this as coming back home to modernize the facility. So I think that's a
great opportunity for community partnership.
Great. No,
Thank you.
we're happy to have a good naming opportunity there if they're interested.
I have a feeling that might be on their radar.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for the report.
Yeah, well, it's great to hear. And good to see, again, it's nice that even before you really started breaking ground and things like that, they're getting ready and they're getting in position and so forth to help meet those deadlines.
And, you know, our goal is, as soon as the football season is over, we are going to start tearing down the bleachers and start pouring footers and getting that rolling so that we can do as much as we can prior to the winter months. So you'll see a lot of activity and then a quiet period and then a fury of activity.
Maybe after the game, we can take their bleacher seats.
I was gonna say, you can sell bits and pieces.
There may be some plans to do so.
Yeah.
I'd like to do Boosters Man auction some stuff.
I like it.
All right, action agenda.
Sure. 10.01 is the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio contract.
Second.
All right. This is the approval of our contracted service agreement for our teacher of visually impaired and our behavioral intervention specialists.
Questions or comments?
Standard, yes. Those are hard to fill positions. So we use the Educational Service Center as a shared resource for those services.
Anything else?
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corman? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janine?
Aye, thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, 10.02 is a construction contract with Robertson Construction.
So moved.
Second. Okay, this formally solidifies our relationship with Robertson as the construction manager of that entire project.
You had some, in the prior draft, some markups, some changes you wanted to make. Did you get
Yes, all of that is finalized.
Agreed to?
Yes.
So this is,
Our attorney has looked at the document and their attorney has, they called and it's agreed upon.
I just have it doesn't have to do with the contract, but as far as scheduling goes for activities and things in the fall, does Josh schedule lots of away games in case there's an issue?
We have pushed the first home game back so that we have some wiggle room in case we have an unusually wet spring and summer. So, yeah, we're gonna push that back as far as possible. That's the one, that and geotech are the two things that we obviously can't control that can delay a project. Right.
There were 2 dates in there, the August 1st date's kind of the intended hope that we can get back in and start practicing and start using the facility a bit, but the August 28th date is reflected.
Yeah, correct.
you feel good about the contingency we have in the budget for this?
And there's still work ongoing to complete the definition of things like locker room facilities and so forth that have been influenced, so the cost will play together.
What we tried to do was, when we projected the cost, we went, tried to go on the high side so that we could reduce cost over time with changes to the design.
Can we resolve the issue yet on the restrooms and what the code requires us?
No. We have tried to shrink the number by utilizing toilets at the baseball hitting facility and toilets in the concession stand, toilets in the location closest to the building or closest to the visitor side. All of those can reduce the number of toilets that we have. It is still a large number that is required.
Is that an opportunity for cost savings or a risk for cost increase? And it's the
It-
Licking County?
It's Licking County, and we will be requesting multiple variances, but that is just one of several.
Amy wants to buy naming rights.
Naming rights to a toilet?
I wanted to buy, I just wanted to.
Yeah. I have messaged that to several people. Yeah.
Naming rights for the porta johns that we can use instead.
What's interesting is a lot, I mean, and most people don't potentially realize this, but we put porta johns out every home game. And to get to a number that is reasonable for, the capacity of the stadium. And once you touch the bleachers, it kicks in a whole new requirement, and porta potties for temporary use are not allowed. So that's the issue. I mean, it's unfortunate, and we're just far enough away from the building that we fall outside of the ability to utilize the big bank of restrooms that are available. But the building will be open for restroom use. However, if we don't have to, if our variance is denied and we have many more toilets, we won't have to worry about that. People have plenty of places to sit.
And Robertson's the one that works us through that with the Licking County Planning Commission?
Robertson and our architect, MSA.
And didn't Johnstown just go through this where they had to face a large number because they redid their bleachers?
They were able to come down a little bit lower than what we're projecting because their facility really is quite adjacent to their new high school. Yeah. So we will probably have additional, more toilets than they do. We're working on it.
Be able to show those Lakewood guys.
Yeah.
We got that number. All right, any other questions?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Corman? Aye. Ms. Dees? Mr. Janice?
Aye, thank you.
Approval of the consent agenda, 11.01A through E.
So moved.
Second?
All right, so I'd like to call your attention to our donations and grants. We have several there. Obviously, the K6 PTO provided $4,000 for the GPS book room. That has been an ongoing effort to build a print-rich environment of level text for students to have access to in our balanced literacy framework. We appreciate their partnership. Also, the Granville Education Foundation provided some additional grant dollars to Leslie Hopping for booster bricks. We have our supplemental contracts, and I'd like to also call out the resignation of Karen Richards, who was an educational aide in our district for a couple of years, and she has decided to resign, but we recognize with appreciation of her service, her tenure here in Granville. Then we have multiple field trips. Just remember, all of those field trips are the parent responsibility to pay. So we have our cheerleaders going to Florida. We have the Granville Middle School FCCLA traveling to Dallas for their fall conference. And then one of the next opportunities that are available through our partnership with Education First and travel plan is India, March 12th of 2021, which is a really exciting opportunity for our students. Getting into the East Asian areas is kind of a new opportunity that's developed related to EF's network. They now have an office dedicated in India, which is fantastic.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, you can always show chaperone. Any questions?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman? Aye. Ms. Dees? Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Okay, item 12.01, approval
Second.
Any questions on the report?
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Dr. Corman? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye. Thank you.
Item 12.02, then and now resolution for Balfour for yearbooks, brush truck centers of Ohio for transportation parts and supplies, and digital impressions for music shirts.
So moved.
Second. Any questions about any of those items? Again, if the amount exceeds $3,000, it has to come to the board for approval.
I'm just curious, what are music shirts?
For the music department, the student shirts.
Student shirts.
Yeah.
So, actually, most of this money is just flow-through money, for like yearbooks.
Yearbook and
Yeah.
music shirts.
It's just the PO needs to be in place
Right.
earlier.
So the music shirts comes through the arts boosters.
This is actually through the music department.
Because it would be competition or a performance shirt.
Yeah. Correct. And I think Rush Truck Centers is actually for tires.
Yes.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corn? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Item 12.03, resolution to establish accounts for the Student Wellness and Success Fund and a student activity account for the marine biology course.
So moved.
Second.
So the Auditor of State and ODE have agreed upon establishing a new fund as part of the state budget. So the additional funding that we're receiving for the Student Wellness and Success initiatives will run through this Fund 467, so is going to be excluded from the five-year forecast. So I will mention that during the five-year forecast presentation next month, but wanted to get this fund set up because we did receive our first payment a couple weeks ago. And then the student activity account for the marine biology course, I believe they're beginning their fundraising initiatives to prepare for that field trip. So I want to get that set up so that they can begin their work.
Very worthwhile process.
Is there any mandate from the state on, or milestones we have to reach as far as the student wellness?
We have a requirement to create a mental health, or I'm using mental health, student wellness plan.
That's the.
And that's kind of what I shared. There's more requirements, not in the actual development of the plan, but it's more how you spend those dollars, just reporting on how those dollars are allocated versus a plan adoption. We're going to formally adopt our plan, that's my intent, but there are requirements for who we can partner with. So we have to partner with other community entities. So we've met with LAB, LMH, Job and Family Services, Mental Health and Recovery Board, Mental Health of America. We will meet with BHP. So we're just working with all our entities, and a lot of them do different aspects. So what we're trying to do is create the multiple prong approach with all those entities so that we have a clear picture of what we're going to do. I drew a picture with Gwen on last Friday of an umbrella. And so really think of the student success and wellness dollars being an umbrella and having multiple aspects or panels within that umbrella that cover a lot of the student wellness activity. But it's also part of that umbrella around the portrait of a graduate too. So a lot of these competencies that we're trying to develop also reinforce what we're trying to do with the student wellness dollars. So looking at positive behavioral intervention services, looking at how to help parents navigate, things that they have to navigate. What are the school conditions that contribute to student wellness or detract from student wellness? What can we do from a curriculum standpoint? So what other services could we provide, to address that gap or that bridge that we need to provide. So all of those types of opportunities will be captured in that plan.
Thanks to you and to Ben for going kind of above and beyond on this. I think this is what we've been wanting to do anyway, right? And having the framework of these funds coming in is great, because I think it helps us kind of formalize that and so forth. So it's great that we're going that way.
I think our plan is to create something that can endure beyond those dollars evaporating. That's what we want to do. We don't want something to create something that literally evaporates when the dollars come. So that's something that we're looking for and striving for.
Other questions?
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
All right.
Dr. Corman? Aye. Ms. Dees? Mr. Chase?
Aye.
Item 12.04, Forecast 5 Analytics Agreement for forecasting and budget software.
So moved. Let Amy second. I'll second Amy's motion.
This is an agreement for, like you said, forecasting and budget software, as well as they have a large database of benchmarking data that will allow us to do a lot of that work kind of on the fly and pull out different graphs and things like that. So it will also help us do a 10-year forecast rather than just the 5-year forecast, which I hope to have available for the presentation next month. And then I'd also like to, once we get further down into it, do a quick demo to show the board and the community the capability of the tool. So it's going to bring a lot of value to this whole process.
And significantly better than what we could get in the system.
Yes.
The alternative system, I should say.
Yes, so this is a web-based tool where in the past we've been in Excel. So that
With
brings with
similar functionality and similar, yeah, how to do it.
Yep, it's going to have the same kind of background formula that feeds it, but it's going to have a much more, a better interface. And it will be a better tool for me to work with the administrative team. It's more user-friendly and more of a finished product rather than the Excel spreadsheet kind of look. So I think that will be exciting for.
Yeah. And if it's web-based, there might be an opportunity to engage public as well in some capacity and so forth. I'm not sure to what extent that's built in, but I think that, we've really benefited from analytical tools like this for our own company and our own understanding, right? And it's the more friendly you can make them and accessible, I'm not saying everybody's going to jump to them, but still having those available kind of contributes to the transparency that we always want to have, right? And maybe there's a way to engage folks better with some of those tools.
They have a lot of functionality for creating quick, like dashboard style reports. So once I get into things and learn how to use all that, I'm excited to be able to, especially through this athletic project, hopefully utilize that tool to publish some of that data quickly and graphically as well.
Can you explain what you mean by benchmarking? I think we had a discussion about benchmarking at one point, and, it can mean different things, so I'm curious as to what.
Yeah,
the
so
tool is.
there's tons and tons of data, but one of the things, so of course there's all of the data that's in the state report card, so financial and non-financial, but I'm most familiar, of course, with the financial aspects, and we'll get into it, and the contract allows for 2 users as well, so Jeff will be able to utilize the other aspects. But you have expenditure per pupil, revenue per pupil, you have benefit costs, so how much do employees pay on benefits. So it's districts all across the state. So you can, there's a ton of different filter options, so you can filter down to just Licking County quickly, and then you can also set up similar district grouping. So we can flip back and forth between those two groupings pretty quickly to show these different data points, which I think is especially useful for us. So it's data that's out there and publicly available, but this puts it into a much more consumable product, as well as all being in one place. So this is, pulling from many different data sources as well.
And so what it allows the board to do is, if, let's say, there's an outlier that we discover through the benchmarking process, we could set a goal to try and, incrementally move towards whatever that outlier is that is in line with, whatever group that we've queried. So it gives us the ability to not only, dig deep into the data side, but the data can then drive the continuous improvement side of the equation on the financial side, just like it does on the academic.
Other questions?
Ms. Dietz.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Corman. Aye. Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye, thank you.
So just as a teaser, to keep you coming back, in November, we will have 4 Granville Intermediate students here with the virtual reality goggles, and they are going to take you through their landform discovery process. So you are going to have a hands-on experience with 4th graders to keep prepared. Cool. Okay? And not to detract from Brittany's presentation.
He does this all the time.
That is going to be equally stimulating.
So, we have faith. Is there a motion?
Second.
Ms. Dietz.
Aye.
Dr. Corman. Aye. Mr. Wolf.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye, thank you very much.